In 1804, two men were handed a suicide mission. Walk across a continent no white American had ever seen, find a route to the Pacific Ocean, or die trying. They had no GPS, no satellite phone, no idea what was out there. This is how they survived the impossible. Act 1, the setup. America's biggest gamble. 1803, President Thomas Jefferson just pulled off the deal of a lifetime, the Louisiana Purchase. 828,000 square miles of land bought from Napoleon for $15 million. That's roughly 4 cents an acre. The greatest real estate deal in human history. But here's the problem. Nobody actually knew what was in it. Seriously, the United States just bought half a continent blind. Were there volcanoes, giant prehistoric creatures, mountains of pure salt? Some people genuinely believed so. Jefferson needed answers, and he needed them from someone crazy enough to walk into the unknown. Enter Meriwether Lewis, Jefferson's personal secretary, a trained soldier, and honestly, kind of a mess. Brilliant but moody, brave but reckless. Jefferson saw something in him anyway. Lewis was given one order: find a water route to the Pacific Ocean or prove it doesn't exist. But Lewis knew he couldn't do this alone. So he called the one man he trusted with his life, William Clark, a red-headed frontier veteran and natural-born leader. Where Lewis was the thinker, Clark was the doer. Together they were unstoppable. They assembled a team of about 45 men, soldiers, frontiersmen, hunters, and one enslaved man named York, who would become one of the most important members of the entire expedition. Remember that name. Act 2, Into the Unknown. May 1804, the Corps of Discovery, that's what they called themselves, launched from Camp Dubois near St. Louis. Their ride, a 55-foot keelboat and 2 smaller boats called pirogues. Their mission, travel up the Missouri River and just keep going. The first months were brutal. Swarms of mosquitoes so thick they could barely breathe. Boils, dysentery, heat stroke. One man, Sergeant Charles Floyd, died of what was likely a burst appendix. He'd be the only death on the entire expedition, which honestly is a miracle. As they pushed deeper into the continent, they encountered nation after nation of Native Americans. The Oto, Yankton Sioux, Teton Sioux. Some meetings were friendly, some were not. The Teton Sioux nearly ended the whole expedition before it really started. A standoff at the river. Warriors with bows drawn, soldiers with rifles raised. One wrong move and Lewis and Clark would have been a footnote, but Clark held his nerve. Negotiations saved the day, being barely. By winter, they reached present-day North Dakota and built Fort Mandan to survive the freezing plains. Temperatures dropped to 40 below zero, and this, right here, is where the expedition found its secret weapon, Sacagawea, a 16-year-old Lemhi Shoshone woman, pregnant, married to a French-Canadian fur trader named Toussaint Charbonneau. Lewis and Clark hired Charbonneau as an interpreter, but it was Sacagawea who became indispensable. Act 3, the mountains and the impossible crossing. Spring 1805, the Corps pushed west, and that's when they hit the wall. Not a figurative wall, the Rocky Mountains. And they were nothing like anyone expected. See, Jefferson believed there'd be a simple ridge, maybe a half-day portage, and then a gentle river flowing to the Pacific. That was the whole theory, an easy northwest passage. What they found instead? Range after range after range of brutal snow-covered peaks. No passage, no easy route, just an endless wall of stone and ice. They were starving, they ate candles, they ate horses. They were so desperate that Clark wrote in his journal, and I'm paraphrasing, "I have been wet and as cold in every part as I ever was in my life." But Sacagawea, she recognized the land. She was home. She led them to her own people, the Shoshone, and brokered a deal for horses. Without those horses, the expedition dies in the mountains. Full stop. And York, the enslaved man? The native nations they encountered had never seen a black man before. He was treated with fascination and respect. Some tribes considered him powerful, even spiritual. On this expedition, York was valued. A bitter irony given what waited for him back in civilization. Act 4, the Pacific and the Legacy. November 1805. After 18 months, 4,000 miles, grizzly bear attacks, near drowning, starvation, and diseases that should have killed them 10 times over, they saw it. The Pacific Ocean. Clark wrote 3 words in his journal: ocean in view. Yeah, he misspelled ocean, but honestly, After what they'd been through, nobody's grading spelling. They wintered on the coast, built Fort Clatsop, and then turned around and did the whole thing again, in reverse. They arrived back in St. Louis in September 1806 to a hero's welcome. Most people had assumed they were dead. The Lewis and Clark expedition mapped the American West, documented 300 species unknown to science, established relations with dozens of native nations, and proved there was no easy northwest passage. They changed America's understanding of itself forever. But here's the part they don't tell you in school. Meriwether Lewis? He spiraled into depression and alcoholism. He died in 1809, likely by suicide, at just 35 years old. Clark lived on, became governor of Missouri Territory, and eventually freed York, but only after years of refusing. The heroes were complicated, history always is. 8,000 miles, 2 years, one of the most insane journeys in human history. And it started because one president bought land he'd never seen and sent 2 guys to figure out what was on it. If you want more stories of people who changed history against impossible odds, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.